Two guys have entered my room with handguns and shotguns.
I'm trying to save my dying son.
But it was like that I was locked in a story that I couldn't rewrite.
This would not be my life forever.
There was a good chance I was not going to survive at all.
And that same evening, I shot him.
I said to her, I think I can forgive you.
I'm Zio Bookbinder, and this is Imagine Justice, where we tell true stories about what happens after harm is done. These stories often include gun violence, death, child abuse, and sexual assault. Please take care in listening. These stories are told by the people who lived them. In this episode, we hear from Rachel So Cox about her experience with peacemaking. Most of the music in this episode comes from members of the Navajo community that Rachel has lived in for many years. Her children are Navajo, and they are at the center of this story. The flute music that you'll hear in the background throughout the episode is a song that was inspired by her son Zaadii. The song is by Jonah Little Sunday, and it's called Zaadii's Dance. Stay tuned to the end of the episode for a song by Zaadii's aunt and uncle, who are a rock-punk duo called Sihasan. I started recording late, so I'm going to set the scene for you. It was 2015, and Rachel was finishing a documentary film that was due. She needed to replace some footage she hadn't yet gotten permission to use, and she was in a rush to do so. She's stressed out and hurrying to get this done, and this is where she picks up the story. Here's Rachel.
Starting Saturday, I started kind of panicking, trying to look for footage to be in the opening scene, and watched all of the footage that I had gotten, and stayed up really late Saturday night. I was kind of panicking because the way it works where I was getting paid is you get just a little bit when you start a film, and then you get the most when you end a film. And like, I hadn't paid my mortgage, like it was one of those, like I was like, super stressed out. So I had looked outside and I saw this storm that was coming over the mountains, and I decided I would just go shoot a time lapse. I could not find my wide angle lens here. I knew it was at my office out at Star School, which was the other direction of where the storm was coming in. So I decided to just go to Best Buy and just buy another wide angle lens so that I could get the shot before the storm ended. So I was taking Bahajoni with me because she was very much my little assistant then. But Zaadii was 3, and I did not want to take him with me. He liked to run around stores, and I just needed to get the lens and get out. So as I was leaving, Zaadii was dressed in his Batman costume, as he always had been, and was on the floor playing with his cousin and playing with some cars. And I was telling him I was leaving. He started crying and he wanted to come. I brought him with me. I told him, if you can put your shoes on, you can come with me. And he put his shoes on. He put them on the wrong feet, no socks. And so the whole way to Best Buy, I gave this whole lecture about you have to hold hands, you can't run around. But if you're really, really good, I will get you a chocolate. He would do anything for chocolate. So he was very, very good in Best Buy, held his sister's hand, and was really, really great. So I got the lens, walked them over to a store 2 doors down to World Market so he could pick out some chocolate. We walked all the way back to Best Buy. It would have been easier to cut across the parking lot to go to my car, but I was very adamant about teaching the rules. I've always been very scared of cars, and scared of cars and my kids in particular. So I was very adamant about teaching the rules. So we walked all the way back to Best Buy to go to the crosswalk and walk across the crosswalk. And I had the bag, the lens and the chocolate over my shoulder. Bahajoni was in this hand and Zaadii was in this hand. And, we even did the whole stop, look, there's no cars coming. And we, entered the crosswalk. We went almost all the way across a crosswalk when a distracted driver turned the corner. I think she was going about 25 miles per hour. In a parking lot, 25 is still pretty fast though. But she turned the corner. She was facing to the right. She had turned left. Her head was facing right, and she had her phone in her hand like this. And she swerved, came into the wrong lane, and hit the 3 of us. And I didn't even see her because I'm holding my kids' hands, and I was also looking to the right because that's where a car would have come from if a car was coming in the correct lane. I wasn't looking to the left. So the next thing I know, Bahajoni is screaming, and then I have her in my hand, and we're both getting knocked, and she got, my arm got pulled all the way back and had her in it. But Zaadii when he got hit, got pulled out from my hand. That was the last thing I felt was him going out from my hand. And so Bahajoni and I got thrown onto the hood, onto her windshield actually, and Zaadii went under. That's how I know she was looking right and looking at her phone, because I saw her. And then I still have Bahajoni in my left hand. With my right hand, I'm banging on her windshield. And she still didn't look. She didn't notice she had hit people. She didn't notice that there was somebody on her hood, on her windshield. Then she finally turned and looked and saw us. And she hit the gas instead of the brake. He probably would have been hurt because he did not go under the first wheel, the front wheel. It was when she hit the gas that she ran over him with the back wheel. And she stopped because there's a little tree growing. You know how in parking lots they'll put little trees and stuff in between. That little tree stopped her. I fell off. Bahajoni had fallen off before. I didn't learn until I read the police report. I had thought that because Bahajoni had her pelvic bones broken in 2 places, I had my knee and my tibia broken, and Zaadii, Zaadi's head was run over, and it was irreparable. It was actually disconnected in the back, so in a way he was kind of he wasn't decapitated. His head wasn't separate from his body, but all of the important stuff in the back was separated. I had thought that it was her hitting when we got thrown onto the hood, that had broken her pelvic bones. But in the police report and the witness report, I realized it was when she had fallen off, the tire had hit her. If that tree hadn't been there, I would have lost Bahajoni too, because she would have also run over her. So yeah, I fell off. Bahajoni was army crawling her way to the side. I ran to the back and I pulled out Zaadii, and he was bloody and he was still trying to breathe though, and there was a lot of blood, and I held him upside down so that the blood would go out so he wouldn't choke on his blood. I had a wilderness first responder training when I was 18, and somehow, and this is 43 when this happened, I was 43, somehow all of that training came back that many years later, and I knew what to do, how to stabilize his neck, and not let him choke. So I'm a real proponent for people getting first aid training or something like that. Even if you don't need it right away, you never know what situation you could be in where you could use it. The woman got out of her car and she just kept screaming, "Oh my God, I'm so freaked out, I'm so freaked out." And I was screaming at her to call 911. She kept saying, I can't, I'm too freaked out. And I was so pissed because she's holding her damn phone and she can't tap it 3 damn times, to call 911. One of my old dear friends, who actually happened to be Bahajoni's teacher when Bahajoni was younger, pulled up right when the accident was happening. She didn't see the accident. She had her windows down, and she said she knew it was me screaming. She could hear me screaming, and she knew it was me, and she grabbed her phone and she jumped out and she called 911. And she stayed with Bahajoni after the first ambulance got there, because they needed a second ambulance for her. And I needed to go with Zaadii, so I was blessed to have her there then, and also knowing that she knew all of Bahajoni's health history, so she could help with that. I'm there trying to save my son's life, and people are they're either standing back and screaming. I remember one woman just standing back and just screaming, no words, just screaming, staring at me. And, I'm trying to remember what to do. And I don't know if I should give him CPR or what. This Hopi man came and was like the only person who would touch us or talk to, he came and tried giving him CPR, started praying over him. Stephanie, my friend, had gone and gotten a blanket she had in her car, and we were wrapping him to try to keep him warm, but keeping his neck stable. And finally the ambulance got there, and they took Zaadii, and it was when I was climbing up into the ambulance that we realized my leg was broken, because as soon as I put pressure on my leg to stand up, it just kind of flipped and totally came out of place, and I fell back. I didn't let my leg get treated for a long time because I didn't want to separate from Zaadii. And then I remember in the ambulance they were they cut his Batman suit off of him, and I remember thinking he's going to be really mad because he really loves that suit. And and they couldn't save him. Took him to the hospital. I was calling frantically my family. I couldn't get a hold of people, so I put a post on Facebook because I knew lots of members of my family look at Facebook more than they answer phones. So I put a post on Facebook saying we just had a horrible accident. Zaadi's fighting for his life. And then finally people started calling me back, and then they met me at the hospital. What that post on Facebook did was it brought our whole community to the hospital, which was pretty amazing. There were hundreds of people who came that were outside the hospital and inside the hospital, in the room with us, and then on all the waiting rooms praying for Zaadii. And that really meant a lot to me, that there were so many people praying for him. The emergency room doctor, who was pretty blunt and rude, said, "Your son's going to die. Do you want him to die down here? Do you want him to die up in the PICU?" And I said, "You're not giving up on him. Like, let's go up to the PICU. Let's keep trying. Like, we can make a miracle happen." We went up there. They moved him, and he was on like a board, and they had things stuffed in his nose and his mouth, and that was like breathing for him. And his eyes were taped shut. And I was able to get on the bed with him. I had another friend who I always say she has my back, because she used a little wheelie chair in there and held me onto the bed so that I could fit on there with him and all of the gear and hold him and not fall out. And my body was like, I was starting to shake, and she held me. Later I learned she was in a wheelie chair, and she locked her feet up underneath the hospital bed, and for 10 hours she held me there with her feet engaged and locked like that. That's quite a friend. And so he died about 13 hours after he was killed. I say he was killed at Best Buy, in front of Best Buy, but he died at the hospital. And at the hospital we had his whole family. His reservation family was there, grandmother and his aunties, and everybody was in the room. And when his heartbeat started going down, one of Zaadi's aunts started singing the traveling song, a traditional Dene traveling song, and we all sang, and people are laying hands on him and touching him and trying to like squeeze his legs and his arms, and Jai really wanted his blood to keep pumping and singing, and it was like out of a movie how like on the very, very last note of the song his heartbeat just ended. So he was 3 years, 3 months, and 11 days, dressed like Batman, and he had curly wild hair. He loved superheroes. He was very active in his life all the time. He liked to dance a lot and listen to music. His favorite song was, I can't even remember the name of the band, but it's one where they go wiggle, 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 wiggle in it. And he just loved that song, and I have to play it over and over again. I think it's like a I'm Sexy song. I don't remember the song. Like, I think I've blocked it out. I just remember the wiggle, wiggle, wiggle part that we listened to that song over and over again. And he always liked to dance, and it's just this wonderful little spark of light. I had him when I was 40. He was born on 11/11/11. So his birthday was just 2 days ago. His birthday was rough this year. I thought I was going to be okay this year through it, so I decided to work. His birthday is a holiday because it's Veterans Day, and I decided to work right up to it and then work after it, thinking I would be okay with just having that day off, but I wasn't. Like, I in the past, I'd taken the whole week off, and that's what I'm going to always do, and just recognize it's going to be a shitty day. So yeah, he was born at 40, and I wasn't expecting to have another child. He was, my joke with my kids is my first one was a bit of an accident. And then Bahajoni was the miracle, because after Camille came, I developed some medical problems where they said I wasn't going to be able to have another kid. And so Bahajoni was the miracle, and then I would call Zaadii my what the fuck baby, like, because I was 40 and not expecting to have another kid, and actually Francis and I were not even getting along very well. Then I had made a film, and Camille had made a film that we had together that was touring, and it was going to be in film festivals in Europe, and we had free trips to Europe planned out where we were going to be able to stay there and to teach, place-based media arts, the stuff that I do. It was this great trip, and I'd never been to Europe, and I was really excited about that. And then I found out I was pregnant, and my due date was right when I was going to be on the trip. They don't let you fly when you're that pregnant. I mean, he really just came out of the blue. And the truth is, when I first found out I was pregnant, I didn't want to have a baby. My career was finally taking off. I had held my career still when I had had Camille. Just kind of went to mothering, and I was finally feeling like free, and now I can, have these like wonderful children that I'd had, and still have a career and still make the difference in the world that I felt like I needed to make to pay my rent to be on this planet. Screw my career, screw all of that. This is what's happening. I'm having a baby, and I'm back to momming all the time. And yeah, I felt like he was meant to be here. He like I said, he came on 11/11/11, and which just seemed like such a magical day. And he was born on 11/22, so all of these multiples of 11. We hadn't even picked out a name in the hospital. It was a committee name, basically, his name. It was his grandmother, two of his aunties, myself, Bahajoni, actually another auntie, and the records lady, as we were getting discharged, and they were saying, you got to give a name for the birth certificate. And so we had to come up with a name right there, and Zaadii is a family name, but I didn't want Zaadii because I thought it sounded too close to bizarre. Tojon is another family name. And so that was one that was going around, and I was like, that sounds too close to Toe Jam. Like, I don't want him to be made fun of. And then somebody put it together. I don't even remember who, said Zaadii Tojon. I said, well, that sounds pretty perfect. And so Zaad means language, and To means water, and Jon comes from Hojo, which is the word that's kind of the center of Dene culture and religion. And Hojo is hard to translate. Some people say it's beauty and harmony and balance, but it's a word that doesn't necessarily translate exactly. My sister-in-law said it means speaks with the power of gentle water. I said, well, I don't know if I want like a name that dooms a child to just speaking softly. What if he needs to speak loudly? And my mother-in-law said, oh, no. Gentle water is what carves canyons and moves mountains. Most people left, and I just kept holding him. I wouldn't let go of him. I held him for like 3 hours, and I felt his body going cold.
could feel the heat going out of him. And I just said, I love you. I just said it like 100 million times, just over and over again. I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. All the I love you I didn't get to say for the rest of his life. I had to say them then. And then the police officer, detective came in with the guy from the morgue or whatever and said that they have to take him because it's now a murder investigation, and that they're going to zip him up in a body bag. And do I really want to see that? And I didn't. So the nurse, several nurses had to lift me up off of the bed because my leg was broken and it was completely swollen at this point, and my shoulder was out of, I was hit on this side, so I was just like swollen on this side, and they lifted me up and they put me in a wheelchair, and Francis, Zaadii's dad, stayed in there with Zaadii until they took him away. And I don't know what that would have been like to see him zipped up, but Francis saw him zipped up in a body bag. I remember when we got on the elevator to go down to the emergency room so they could deal with me, I kept refusing care, and my leg was getting bigger and bigger, and it's like my knee was like a full-size watermelon, not like a personal watermelon, but like a full-size watermelon. And I didn't want to miss a second of Zaadii being alive, and I knew he was going to die, even though I really didn't believe it. I just had to believe that they were saying he was going to die, but I thought we could pull some sort of miracle. He was such a magical little man. I got into the elevator and the doors closed, and that's when the wails started. I'd heard about wailing women, after a death, and I just thought that was like a cultural thing, but it turns out it's not. My jaw just opened and my head went back, and it's like I couldn't control it. It came out of my belly, and it just came out, this most guttural wail, and just I couldn't stop. And the woman that was the nurse who was taking me down, she was so great. She just stopped the elevator, and she didn't shame me for it. She didn't act shocked. She just rubbed on my shoulders until it was done.
So did you have to be interviewed by the police?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was.
How long after?
Well, immediately after, as soon as we got to the hospital, they started interviewing me. But I think it was during the MRI that they saw that where the most damage was irreparable. And so while he was away from me, undergoing a surgery in the MRI, that's when they started interviewing me. And they interviewed me while I was holding him while he was dead, too. The woman who did it had not been arrested because in a parking lot, there's no driving laws. You don't have to drive on the right side of the road. You can drive on the left side of the road. You don't have to follow speed limits, even. Parking lots in Arizona are considered pastures. So stop signs, crosswalks, all of that are just decoration. And so there's no enforcement for how you can be in a parking lot. So if it had been, if we had been crossing at the street instead of crossing like in front of the Best Buy, she would have been arrested immediately. But in Arizona, as in a lot of other states, if you kill somebody in a parking lot, you are charged if you have the intention to kill, if you are drunk, or if you are high on other drugs. She had told somebody that she was lightheaded from breathing into the breathalyzer to start the car, and that she was blacking out, and that's why she went into the wrong lane. She had not been driving for a long time because she'd had an earlier DUI and then was just allowed to drive again, but she was not drunk at the time. She was on a lot of pharmaceutical drugs, but she wasn't on anything that wasn't prescribed for her, and she wasn't taking anything
inappropriately, even though some of those drugs say do not operate heavy machinery. And what the fuck is a car if it's not heavy machinery? Later, the grand jury charged her with criminal neglect. The prosecutor let me know pretty early on that he said people charged her because they feel so bad for you, but this isn't going to stand. She didn't break a law. And I hated this woman. I hated her. I just hated her. And then she wasn't going to get charged. They said, the best we can do is offer a plea deal to her and maybe she will take it. Or she could fight it and she'll probably win because there's no laws broken. I saw her often. 3 months to the day after Zaadii was killed, I had to go to the hospital to get his records to take to the lawyer. And I got to the hospital and realized I had left my purse at home, didn't have my identification. I went to the records room anyways, and the woman was like, yep, I know who you are. I know you're Zaadii's mom, but I cannot release anything without your ID. So I went back to my car and my gas light was on, and I live far out of town. I knew I wasn't going to have enough gas to get home, to get my ID, and to get back to a gas station. So I was like, here I'm back in the hospital for where my son died and for the first time. And I was just like this rack of nerves. And I called Francis and he was at work. And he said, if you can drive over here, I'll run outside and give you my debit card. And then you can go get gas. I was like, okay. So I'm driving down from the hospital. I'm already a bit of a wreck. And I stop at the stoplight. And I'm the first person at the stoplight. And I see the woman who killed Zaadii walking down the sidewalk. And I realize she's about to cross at the crosswalk right in front of me. And I put it in the park because I had already had lots of fantasies of running her over. That's where my brain was. And I threw it in the park and, watched her cross. And just anger. And I remember the other people that were crossing with her, they were looking at me because I'm like at my windshield just shooting daggers out my eyes at this woman, so mad and so angry at her, and she didn't even notice. And I just remember the other cars passing me and people behind me honking, and I couldn't drive. I couldn't figure out, I had forgotten I had stuck it in a park. I was just revving and revving and revving my engine. And then I realized it's in park. It wasn't until like the next light, and then I finally went through. I made it about 4 blocks before I pulled over and just freaked out, just shook and screamed and freaked out. They have peacemaking at Star School, and Star School's whole values are based off of these peacemaking values. And so with a group of students a few years prior, we had made a film about peacemaking that the students could use to teach other students about peacemaking and maybe send it out to other Dene schools. What I witnessed was several peacemakings that were done with youth. And one that I witnessed, it was a young man who had actually stolen one of the vans that we have at Star School. Stolen one of the vans, snuck onto campus, stole the van, took it back to his house, and was partying it out when we got it tracked down and found it. We decided to not be punitive. We decided to do a peacemaking with him instead. And that peacemaking lasted days and days and days. I think like 3 days. It was intense. What came out of it was there was all of this pressure from his stepfather who was wanting him to work and make money, and just it was all of this came out, and in the end there was this beautiful reconciliation between the stepfather and the son, between the student and the school, and the student repaired the van and became a peacemaker himself. So instead of a situation where this kid gets expelled and goes to jail, instead of this whole bad scene happening, it was able to bring him back into the community. He went from being this kid that, was getting into a lot of trouble to being this leader, and it came from the peacemaking. And then it not only healed the stuff between him and the school, but him and his stepfather. And, just watching that was just really, really powerful, and realizing, okay, this young man's life right now has changed. I knew about that, and I knew about through making the film with the students and hearing from the kids actually about how much better they felt after the peacemaking, the victims of whatever it was, the victims of the bullying or whatever was happening. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to feel better, and I was just angry all the time. Like, talking to my therapist, like, it was so clear, my dreams where I'm stuffing Emily into an oven and lighting it on fire, and then she's shooting out a volcano. Like, it was pretty damn obvious. I was just operating off of sheer anger. I was so pissed at this woman and so mad at the world. And so every morning, every time I went into the bathroom and I saw myself in the mirror, I would yell at the mirror like it was her, and I was turning into this really, really, really angry person. And I still needed to parent Bahajoni and Camille. Camille was already 18 and she had moved out by then, but still needed to parent, and I couldn't parent when I was just so angry, and I couldn't teach. I wasn't functioning. I also, at that time, I'd never been a drinker, but I started drinking whiskey around those days. I just wasn't healthy. So I did it for selfish reasons. I asked for a peacemaking because I thought that could be the only way that I could maybe possibly feel better. It wasn't this, like, I do believe in peacemaking, but I wasn't coming out of it out of some moral values. It was fully selfish. It was, I want to feel better, and I need to find a way to feel better, or I'm gonna self-destruct.
Chiming in to explain what happened here, the prosecutor offered the driver a plea deal and asked Rachel how she felt about it. Rachel had something she wanted in exchange for offering the deal.
The main thing I asked for was for her to agree to do a peacemaking with me, no matter how long it took. And what I didn't know about her was that she had worked as a lunchroom lady in those schools, so she was familiar with Navajo culture. That was a little bit of a blessing because she had already had a respect for Navajo cultural ceremonies. She did agree to it. Thomas Walker, who's actually on the board of Star School, so I asked him to come and do it because he knew Zaadii very well.
I am Thomas Walker, and I am from the southwest corner of the great Navajo Nation. And we are residents of a huge, very special, and very powerful mountain. English name for the mountain is San Francisco Peaks. To us, it's Stoko Sleet. The snow glitters in the sunlight at the summit of the peaks. So when I'm asked to do peacemaking, it helps to get background information, sitting down with people that need some kind of resolution there. And the process involves a really good, strong introduction component. Tell us who you are, where are you coming from, what brought you here, allowing people to learn about each other. And this is before people start talking about the issue, their differences. As much time as people need without saying, oh, okay, you've had your 3 minutes, you're next, and you're next. And people do need time to talk. That allows us to show each other some glimpse of what we're really like today. The peacemaker practitioner has to work with everyone to make sure that, for the lack of a better way of saying it, being on the same page at each step of peacemaking. There are several steps. Really good communication to a peacemaker means, okay, that whatever expressions are genuine and they're coming from deep inside. If it's pain, well, okay, got to hear that. Got to see that and acknowledge that. The thing that helps the most is probably feedback every now and then. Sometimes it happens on its own during the course of a session. People would say, well, I feel like this right now. I feel like this is helpful or this is not helpful. I feel like this is not going anywhere and I don't want to listen anymore. Or somebody would say, I need to hear more. I need to listen more. I need to understand more. So that's really good feedback. In a session as a peacemaker, you got to keep track of that as well. People need to really, really see each other and really see the harm that was done. Something that can't change, no matter what. Once the situation or the problem is defined according to participants' input, we all agree, okay, that's the issue, or that's the problem, or that's the conflict. And then, of course, from there on is the part about what do we do? What do we do to address our needs as participants? So that one's fully loaded because we all have, again, different levels of needs. We have a need to be heard, we have a need to be acknowledged, and you begin to see, okay, can some of those needs be addressed by all that are involved? Can some of those needs be addressed today? Can some of those needs even be addressed? Keep everything that was discussed at that place and leave it there. And agree, sort of like make an agreement. Seal the agreement with acknowledgement and a handshake or a hug and say, okay, we did something here today and a lot came out, a lot was shared, a lot was felt, and now we understand. We see the needs. Some can be addressed and some probably will take time. But for today, we've gone through this extraordinary process and we come to some conclusion amongst ourselves that are deeper than what we can probably describe.
We went through the process of trying to get it set up in the Coconino County court system because a peacemaking had never been done off of the Navajo Nation and definitely not in the court system. And the night before I was very nervous. I kept, every time I would see this woman in town, it would be horrible. And I was very nervous about seeing her. And of course it's a small town, so I would run into her and it was, devastating. It would take me right back to those moments and it would throw me off for like a week or so. And I was very scared to see her. I was very scared to face anything that had to bring it all back up again, even though it's strange to be scared of the thing that you're thinking. I was scared to be forced to think about the thing that I was always thinking about anyways, but I was just very afraid of it. I had the police report and I had her statements and the witness statements from all of the depositions, but I hadn't opened them. I decided that night that I was going to read all of that so that I would go in knowing everything. And that was a mistake because I already couldn't sleep. I was already nervous. And then I read the entire criminal report and then the police report, and then I read all of the testimony. And up until then, I had just had my version of what had happened. Like, I didn't know that she had almost killed Bahajoni too. Every single time she was interviewed, she had a different story. And then in her deposition, the most honest one was the very first interview that she gave to the police. But after that, every additional interview, every single time she was deposed, the letters that she had sent into the court pleading her case, every single time her story changed. So she was telling people that I was walking with my hand in my phone, with my face in my phone, and my kids were running. and she was trying to avoid them and swerve away from them, and that Zaadii just ran right under her car, and she tried stopping and she couldn't stop in time, which is a complete and total lie. And she had even told that to somebody in the press, and that had gone around in some of the circles, which I think people like to jump on that. People don't like to think that you can be walking across a crosswalk, holding your kids' hands, doing everything absolutely right, and still they could get killed. And so I think people like to blame mothers of dead children. You know, oh, well, if she had been doing this right, then this wouldn't have happened. Everybody likes to insulate themselves and think these bad things can't happen to them because they're doing things right, and didn't want to face that, no, I was doing everything right. I'm on the cross. I mean, he was run over a foot from the other side. He was almost to safety. He was a foot away from safety. So I was livid when I went in there with her, because not only had she killed my child, but then she was bashing me as a parent, you know, as if she was the good person just having to deal with this like crazy mom letting her kids run and roll over parking lots, which was not the case, you know, and not the witness testimony, not any of that, but these were the things that she was saying. It had become truth to her. And I also felt like she was taking away my community support. And I felt like the community support was the only thing keeping me up and keeping me going. And I went in there just, like people use the word triggered. I would say like more than triggered. Like I was like cocked and loaded and like electric and inflamed all at the same time. If I was to guide somebody to go through a peacemaking like this again, I would ask them, I think they should read those reports. I think they should know all of that, but maybe not the night before. We met in the Coconino County Courthouse. We had it for the whole day. You know, when you go into that courthouse, there's pictures of men up on the walls that committed horrible genocide, like Rodin's up there, and he murdered little girls so that he could get access to the land and have his cattle there, little Navajo girls. Like this whole place is founded on the genocide of Dene people. There was some talk about how we would not be able to go to the next day because they weren't going to book us the room. That was a little distressing to me, because a peacemaking, you have to be willing to take it all the way. It's not a quick thing. We had a medicine man and a peacemaker. Emily, her lawyer was there as well, who was a public defender, and she had 3 of her children with her on her side as her support. The county attorney was in there as well, and then so it's a round table, but we were kind of on opposite sides of the table. And then there was me, so I was sitting directly across from Emily. There was me, Francis, Zaadii's dad, my ex-husband, his mother, May So, his sister, Betty So, and my lawyer. And then somebody from Victim Witness Services was in there as well. The victim is the first person allowed to talk, so our side was allowed to talk. And I just went off on her. I was so mad at her, and I just spewed all of my hate and anger and outrage at her lying, outrage at her killing my son, outrage at her being more concerned with her phone than operating a heavy weapon. Like, I was just livid, and I just let it all out, which was not pretty. It was very, very ugly. And then Francis spoke, and he also let out a lot of anger. And Francis's mother spoke, and she was a lot more somber and teary. Francis's sister spoke. And then it was their turn.
As Thomas explained, these processes are private. Rachel shares her own experience, but we are leaving out any details about what anyone else said or did to respect the process.
After we had done our part, and after she and their side had said everything, we broke for a late lunch because it had gone on for a very, very long time. And I was just feeling miserable. And my lawyer came in and said that the son was convincing the mom to not finish and that they were going to leave and we weren't going to end it. And I was just like, that was it for me. I was just devastated. Like, here, we've done all of this. We're in the middle of the peacemaking, and we don't get to the good part. We don't get to the feeling better part, which was all I wanted, was to feel better. Like, all I had done was, and all everybody had done was let out their emotions, and we didn't get to any sort of resolution. And I remember just laying my head on that table. I mean, I was holding onto the table because everything in my body wanted me to just run and jump out that window. Like, it just took me everything to keep myself in that room. And I was just about to quit and give up on everything. I think I said something to that effect to my lawyer. It was just the two of us in there. And I think I said something like, all I can think right now is how to not jump out that window. Like, I can't think of anything else. Is right now, all I can do is keep myself in this chair. And then he came back in a little bit later and said, they're going to complete it. So we went through the rest of the steps of the peacemaking after the questioning, and then came up with agreements. The agreements are sealed. Like, we're not allowed to talk about the agreements after, unless maybe if she agreed that it'd be okay to talk about it. But we made agreements in there, and they were good agreements. I felt really good about them. And then at the very end, you shake hands, and it's just the whole thing. It's the process, and the process is very, very powerful. But you also have to give the process the space. But when we stood up to shake hands and everybody leave in the ending part, she asked if she could hug me, and I said yes. And it's still probably the most intense hug I've ever had in my life, because I felt her heartbeat, like her heart was on my heart, and I could feel her heartbeat in my own chest. And here I am, the person that brought him in, and she's the person who took him out. And it was like this, I don't know, alpha and omega, I don't know. And it was a lot of crying. And we held each other for a long time, like maybe 10 minutes. Which is something else in a peacemaking you have to be willing to do. You don't just shake hands and just move. Like, there's got to be space for the emotions and the let out and the processing. And right as I was we were breaking away from the hug, I said to her, I think I can forgive you. I said, I think I know I will forgive you. I didn't say I forgive you then, because it took me a while to realize that's really what happened, because I didn't think forgiveness was anything really possible. And so I just told her, I think I can forgive you.
Did she say anything back when you said that?
I remember looking in her face and her eyes and just lots of tears. I think she said, thank you. I just remember that I wanted to keep hugging her. I wanted to hug her again, but we were moving along.
How long was the process? How long were you in that room?
8 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
And since the peacemaking happened, have you had dreams or fantasies about harming her?
No, I haven't. What happened with me emotionally after the peacemaking, and I think with Zaadii's dad as well, and I don't know about Zaadii's grandmother or aunts, but I know that with me and Zaadii's dad, anger was our primary emotion after his death. Like, we just couldn't be anything but angry. And what happened with me is that it allowed that anger to start to dissipate. And then what I was left with was the real emotion of the sadness and just being sad and just missing him. And that is healing. We don't ever heal. I don't like that word healing. Like, you don't ever heal from losing a child. Like, that's always going to be there. The only way you could heal from it is you could bring him back. But you move through. I heard somebody say something about emotions as they have motion in them. You're supposed to move through them. It's your emotion. And it allowed me to move through the anger and to get to the sadness and be genuinely sad. And when you can be genuinely sad, I feel like you can also be genuinely joyous. And allowed me to have a genuine, authentic grief of just missing him and honoring him and not being clouded with just hate. At Coconino County Courthouse here in Flagstaff, there are a lot of Dene people who go through that system. I think that the indigenous population here is only 6%, but the indigenous population that goes through the court system and is in the jails is outrageous. I want to say it's like 70%, I think is what I've heard, but I don't want to put a number on there that I'm not accurate with. But to be able to have, I was thinking if that could be Zaadii's legacy. Zaadii was being raised in a family and in a community that really, really values service. And what we've missed with losing Zaadii is we've missed the service that he could have given to our community, to his community. And so if that could in some way be brought back to serve his community, to be able to set this peacemaking in as a precedence to where other Dene people going through the system could do peacemaking and maybe even avoid part of the system, maybe even avoid having things be so punitive. But to be able to be brought back in to the circle and not banished, that's what our punitive system is banishment, right? Banish them. But the peacemaking is the opposite. It's about bringing people back into the circle. I'm no longer a person walking around so angry that who knows what I could have done or what I might have done. I feel a lot of compassion for her, and when I talk about her, when I talk to students or youth that are just getting started to drive, I say things like, it's really, really horrible to be me, but it's also really horrible to be her. Feel how horrible it's got to be to live with that every single day. And whereas before I was jealous that she got to be around her grandson who was Zaadii's age. And now I'm not. Now I feel like her loving him has got to be a part of her also giving love to Zaadii. That's what I really wanted as his legacy, is having peacemaking in at least this one border town next to the Navajo Nation. If we can at least not have so many Dene people, indigenous people, having to go through this punitive system that's just, you get in it and you're just stuck. That if we could bring people back into the community, then that would be a real service.
Thank you, Rachel, for sharing your story. Thank you, Zaadii, for the bright light you cast in your short time on this planet. Thank you, Thomas, for taking the time to share about the peacemaking tradition. One last question. How do you reimagine justice?
I'd like to see one day that peacemaking is at least half of our justice system, if not all, and that the American model of justice is an alternative. The restorative justice talks about restoring what was once in place. In other words, picking up where one left off before the problem began, going back to the way things were before the conflict. Now with Navajo peacemaking is, yes, that can be done, but that's not the goal. The goal is to heal people. In other words, it takes the restorative justice way much further to where people feel better, relieved, people regain strength, regain hope, regain trust, feel good about themselves and each other and life in general. We have prayers in the Navajo language, the Navajo belief system that allows us to conclude a prayer by saying, beauty is restored. Ojo is concept of peace and harmony or beauty. Ojo. Nahasli meaning we return back to that beauty. So if our prayers are about that, well, I think life is like that. That's how we see issues. And with peacemaking, I'd like to say that that's the ultimate goal. That's what we work for, is to restore that peace and harmony and beauty, and not go back to where before the conflict, what things were like. Yes, to do that, but to go beyond and further and go into healing, making people stronger, making people feel more appreciative about themselves and then their environment and other people, appreciating life in general. If that isn't healing, I don't know what is, The courts, they offered to pay for my services to help Rachel and her family, and I said no. It's to help people. I don't want to be taken out of the area and be out there offering services. The services are needed and it would be appreciated and it would help, but I can't see myself do that. I've thought about our peacemaking with Rachel and family, and I've been asked, how did it go? What was it like? What did you see? What did you feel? What do you think? It was an honor to be asked, to be part of a process, to be drawn into situation, to the lives of people. So I've got long-term commitment to being that keeper of information and experience and a process. I'll take that day, what I felt, what I heard, to the next world.
Stay tuned for the song after the credits. Thank you for listening to Imagine Justice. I'd love to know what you thought of the episode. Please leave a rating and a review. I am Zio Bookbinder, the creator of this podcast. This episode was edited by me with help from Christina McGillivray. This episode was made possible with funding from Canada Council for the Arts. If you or someone you know has lived a story that you think would be good for this podcast, please visit zeobookbinder.com/podcast to make a submission. That's zeobookbinder.com/podcast. And here is the song See You by Sihasan.
All the splinters, one love glimmers in the shadow of my heart. One light shimmers and skims off to dimmer with firelight flicker. Sand sifted thinner through embracing finger. I felt your thought to fly.